NFL Combine is around the corner. We're going to talk all things draft coming up with Greens, who just got back from Mobile and the Senior Bowl.
We can beat anybody in the world, and I think we're going to win next Sunday.
It's picked off. Aaron Glenn. And Jumbo Elliott. One-handed catch. Incredible. Gets running room. It's Reese. Can't wait.
All right, Greens, you ready to talk some NFL draft?
Yeah, I am. It's crazy to think about that. It's draft season considering it's February, but we're here.
Who are the Jets taking it to?
Coin flip between you and me.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What are they saying on the ground in Mobile? Because you just got back from Alabama a couple of weeks ago now.
Yeah. In terms of 2 overall, or just in terms of like the Senior Bowl
I
itself?
would think it's a good question. I would say about the Jets draft capital, specifically heading into 2026 here with the 8 picks and the 2 in the top 16 overall and then the 4 in the top 44.
Yeah, I think that Trevor Sikkema from PFF, he called it like if he were a GM, he'd be a kid in a candy store, which I think is a good way to look at it considering the draft capital and the Jets. The 33rd pick, I kind of have circled. Obviously, 2 overall speaks for itself, 2 in the top 16, but the 33rd pick is always kind of like it's always an interesting pick because theoretically you are getting someone that might have slipped out of the first round that people might consider a first-round talent, or you're a hot candidate to work the phones because there might be a team that is trying to get up to get somebody who slipped out of the first round. So to me, like that's kind of where I go, because I like the draft like that. But I think a lot of analysts believe that the Jets have the opportunity to draft quality players, 4 potential starters, and have the ability to kind of change things quickly.
You know Darren Mougey is going to be taking a lot of calls Thursday night following down to that first round, or even once we start getting to the 20s, because teams start looking at their board, to your point, and saying who's still available on day 2. And there's a lot of time between that last pick in the first round and that first pick in round 2. So I think a lot of people will be envious of the Jets' spot there. Overall, you were there for a few days in Mobile, and they say the draft starts there. Yeah. That's the tagline. Senior Bowl week. What's your thoughts that people are saying about the 2026 class as a whole?
Yeah, I think the defense kind of stands out in terms of the edge rushers, the off-ball linebackers. Those are the 2 positions that are deep in this year's class. And I know Daniel Jeremiah has talked about the receiver group as well. That's another deep position, which, all 3 positions, I could see the Jets adding a player at all of those. Like you think about linebacker right now, Quincy Williams, expiring contract. Kiko Maui-Noa is going into his 2nd year, and the Jets have Jamie Sherwood under contract. So you take a look at that position. Maybe the Jets want to add a body or 2 there. Edge rusher, Will McDonald, Jermaine Johnson. You can never have enough edge rushers, especially, I know we'll get into this not only today, but over the course of the season, or the offseason, should I say, is the number 2 overall pick. It sure feels like could end up being an edge rusher, whether that's Ruben Bain, David Bailey, Arvell Reese, if that's the direction where teams want to play him. And then in terms of receiver, I don't think it'd surprise any of us if the Jets ended up drafting a receiver at some point, whether that is in the first round, day 2, or day 3. So those seemingly match up well with potentially what the Jets would want to add. Obviously, we're taping this a while before free agency. Things could always change, but as of now, I think that shapes up well.
Was there a little individual disappointment when you found out that both Bain and Bailey were not attending?
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I wanted to see those guys up close and personal because it's so intricate the way the practices are set up there in Mobile, where for one-on-ones, for O-line, D-line, like you could just kind of walk to where it's happening on the field. Like you're between the hashes watching one-on-ones. That's not the case for anywhere else. And so, yeah, I wish we could have seen those guys, but I guess we'll stick to the YouTube highlights.
You always follow mock drafts, maybe better than anybody. What's amazing about you is that throughout the college season, you're not really up to speed on maybe who's necessarily playing this weekend, where myself and a guy like Tony Mancuso and Seth Bradley are talking about, hey, Penn State's got Michigan this week, Tennessee's got Alabama, and you're like, oh, well, what's going on Sunday, boys? But by the time the regular season ends, until maybe the second or third week of January, you get to know everybody as far as the prospects are concerned.
I feel like, it's interesting. I feel like there are, in leagues in general, not just NFL or college, there are people who follow individuals and people who follow teams. Like, I never really had a college football team. Obviously, like going to
You went to Syracuse, bro.
Yeah, and like they were not good when I was there. I followed and I followed now, but I'm not like, following the recruiting trail unless it's like a big name like Calvin Russell, who also is now playing for the Syracuse basketball team this year before playing for the football team next year. Like there's stuff like that I follow, but you're right. I'm not like, unless it's come playoff time in terms of college football playoff or the big bowl games, I'm not like NC State, pick an opponent. Yeah, I can't wait. Like that's your cup of tea.
NC State, Virginia Tech.
Yeah, NC
Thursday
State,
night ball.
That's right. That's not for me.
All right, so right now it sure seems like we're headed to a draft start where the Las Vegas Raiders have a head coach in place at that point, Clint Kubiak, and they draft a quarterback from Indiana, Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
That being said, for a long time we were talking about, if the Jets had the number 2 overall selection, what about Dante Moore? Well, Dante Moore said he's going back to school. So obviously he's off the board. You mentioned a couple of those guys where fans, I know, their ears are perking up right now. David Bailey, Texas Tech. Ruben Bain, Miami. Arvell Reese, Ohio State. Does it feel like more people are talking, if the Jets stay at 2, and we're in February, but if they stay at 2, is it me or does it seem like more people are pointing to Reese right now?
That's definitely the case.
Okay.
I mean, not only in terms of mock drafts, but also just speaking to different analysts in Mobile, when I would ask the question, like, who are players at 2 overall that you think Jets fans should start to get to know as we're here in February, the early parts of February? The first player's name was always Arvell Reese. And, I asked Dane Brugler about this in Mobile. I was like, what is the comparison there? Because for someone that's played everywhere for the Buckeyes, like, what's his path? And, it's so interesting because so much of the NFL draft is traits-based, not necessarily performance-based. And that's not the, one-size-fits-all. That's just, one aspect when you talk about, like, potential. And you think about a guy like Isaiah Simmons from Clemson years ago. He played everywhere for the Clemson secondary, and then he didn't pan out to be the player that people thought he would. Now, then you take Micah Parsons as another example, somebody who played in a number of different spots in Penn State's defense, more front 7, like Arvell Reese does for the Buckeyes. Parsons puts his hand in the dirt. He's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. So I think that's kind of the path for Arvell Reese, at least what the analysts see. It's a bit of an unfair comparison, obviously, because of how good Parsons is. But just in terms of the path, I think that's probably where that direction's going.
With that being said, is he kind of a tweener, like a hybrid player? And how did Patricia use him? Because I think this is going to benefit not only him, but everybody who played in that Ohio State defense that they were coached up by Matt Patricia last season.
Yeah, well, so Arvell Reese, if you do a quick search on the internet, is listed at 6'4", 243. And if you look at Micah Parsons, he's 6'3", 250. So there's
similar build.
Similar build.
A little taller.
A little taller, a little lighter.
Yeah, it's typical coming out of school, right?
Right. Well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Like, I wonder what Michael Parsons looked like in his first year coming out of Penn State. Granted, it was a little different because if you remember, he forewent his senior season or his junior season because of it, you could with COVID. So he had all that time to physically train. So with Reese, I don't necessarily know if he's as like stocky as Parsons. Like he doesn't seem to be that style, but also, I haven't seen him in person play, but I think that what stands out when you look at him is like speed. And in an NFL modern defense, you're going to need speed. I mean, you take a look at, what the Seahawks look like just because they're playing in the Super Bowl. They have significant speed. So I think that it'll be interesting to see the way that Aaron Glenn and Brian Duker, if the Jets go in the Arvell Reese direction, like what kind of player they would want him to be, what position.
Right.
But I think analysts are expecting him to put his hand in the dirt and get after the quarterback.
And the same can be said for Ruben Bain and David Bailey, correct?
Yeah, but Reese is the only one that's really like played linebacker too. Like those guys are just get after the quarterback. Very different flair though, it feels like, because Ruben Bain, everyone's going to talk about how short his arms are. And I saw this one tweet. It's quite funny, actually. It says he might have T-Rex arms, but he happens to be a T-Rex. Like, he's strong. He's a great football player. He wins with strength, where Bailey definitely has a little bit more of a pass rush plan, maybe a little more elusive than someone like Ruben Bain. But it's different flavors of style. And I think that, projecting to see what Aaron Glenn likes in a defense, when you think about what the Lions had, like, I'm not saying either one of these guys is Aiden Hutchinson, but if you're hard-nosed and you get after the quarterback, I think AG is going to like you, and I think Duker's going to like you.
Yeah, and Bain's numbers were absurd in terms of pressure rates at Miami. Really like his motor.
Don't you think, like, one of the questions, though, like, if you win with strength in college, like, one thing that I always wonder is, like, is that always going to win in the NFL if you're considered undersized? You know what I mean?
Yeah, but, it's interesting, too, because if you talk to personnel guys, sometimes you're looking to check boxes on certain things, right? Whether it's speed or arm length. There's certain physical skill sets that you're looking for at positions. But with that being said, you can't tailor it up for everybody, because sometimes there are exceptions to the rule. And Bain might be an exception to the rule from the pass rushing position.
100%.
And also, to your point, these are premium spots when you're talking about edge guys. So potentially, there's a world where all three of those guys could go probably in the top 6 picks. Right now, you'd say, yeah, they're likely top 10 picks, but we got a lot of time to go between now and late April. What about the receiver position? Because we're going to get to Mobile here in a second, what you actually saw down there on the ground as far as some Senior Bowl standouts. But Carnell Tate, and I said receiver, but let's just say playmaker, Jeremiah Love.
Yeah.
How early could those guys go, you think?
I don't want, like, it's interesting because you ask me today, you ask me a month from now, you ask me a week before the draft.
Right.
Like, it could go from, top 20, top 10. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if any one of those guys you just said ends up being top 10.
Yep.
Right? Like, remember the year where it was...
I just love Ohio State receivers.
How could you not?
We got a really good one here. And then every time I watch Jackson Smith and the Jigba, I'm like, oh, my God. And to think that these dudes were all playing together at one point.
And I mean, I know we went to Alabama, but, like, Jamison Williams was in that Ohio State receiver.
That's right.
Too. Like, there's obviously people talk about Brian Hartline and the job he's done.
That's why he's the head coach now.
Right. And you think about, like, Jeremiah Smith in a couple of years. And
I'm saying Jeremiah Smith might be the top overall selection next year.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy. All that's to say that with Carnell Tate, like, if you're a believer in drafting from, like, a blue blood school at a blue blood position, that seems to be a layup there. But Becca Buka, I mean, you think about the production,
right.
It's like crazy to think about. But with Tate, like, and Tyson and out of Arizona State, Makai Lemon, like, do you remember the draft class that it was Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Henry Ruggs? Like, you knew that those guys were going to go. You just didn't know, like, in what order.
Right.
And even when you thought you knew the order, then it ended up not being the order you thought originally. It's like, this to me initially feels like it has the potential to be that, because Mekhi Lemon, for as all the things you want to knock him for, his size being the biggest one, I think that there's going to be a world where, the Lions are a great example of this with Jahmyr Gibbs, where it's like maybe he wasn't expected to go 12th overall or whatever he was, and then all of a sudden you're like, we don't care about what the negatives are. We see XYZ. Like, we don't see that running back shouldn't be drafted at 12th overall. We see a playmaker. Mekhi Lemon seems to play bigger than his frame, strong at the catch point.
I love pro comps because people are always talking about Lemon and St. Brown, because you mentioned Detroit and Jahmyr Gibbs before.
Yeah.
If you're getting compared to St. Brown right now. All right.
I wonder how much of that is also because of the helmet, like the USC angle. I'm sure that the play style also fits, but I think it's also an easy comparison because of what will be Mekhi Lemon's alma mater.
So it's so interesting when you look at the Jets receiver position, because they got a star there, bona fide superstar, I think, and Garrett Wilson. People forget about him because we weren't able to watch him down the stretch. Talk about his durability early in his career. He did not miss a game before this season. So he's going to come back with great fire. The Jets made those midseason trades, John Mechie, Adonai Mitchell coming back in return. And they produce. It's going to be interesting what they do in a new offense and how they kind of fit in. But when you're looking at the receiver position and people are like, well, Jets might be looking at receiver early, Daniel Jeremiah read up on him the other day saying that he's got like 11 of his top 50 are receivers.
Yep. And for what it's worth, you said Jeremiah Love, he's DJ's number 2 prospect
overall.
Yeah.
But getting back to the receiver position, it's interesting because it seems like this draft is loaded with good ones. Are there superstars great ones? And if there are, how early do you go? Or is that a position where you're like, hey, listen, we got multiple needs, we got multiple holes, and I know I can get a good one down the line? You don't have to answer that, but I'm sure that's going to go on.
Totally.
That discussion is going to happen in draft rooms across the country draft weekend.
Just for food for thought in terms of where Lemon, Carnell Tate, and Jordan Tyson rank, pulling up Daniel Jeremiah's top 50, the number 7 overall prospect is one of those 3. Do you want to guess which one?
Lemon.
That is correct. So he says, Lemon is one of my favorite players in this year's draft. He's a wideout with a running back's body and a linebacker's temperament.
Love it.
He's best in the slot. That's what he says. You go down 2 slots to 9 overall, you get Carnell Tate. Tall, long wideout at standing play speed, production, excellent suddenness to defeat press coverage, covers ground quickly with his long stride.
Well, Jets fans, once they hear that description, and we saw, listen, we got to see what this offense looks like with Frank Reich calling the shots now. But the Jets used Garrett Wilson more in the slot, at least earlier last season than he had previously in his career. But what you just described as Tate, I'm thinking about a big X receiver.
And also talking about Frank Reich, and the USC connection, I'm pretty sure he overlapped with Michael Pittman in Indianapolis.
That's right.
So maybe Reich dials up Pittman and says, hey, you know anything about this guy, Mekhi Lemon, same school. Anyway, the 15th overall prospect is Jordan Tyson. And DJ says, explosive receiver, a lot of wow plays, fluid mover, incorporates variety of releases and general creativity into his route running. He's got suddenness. Durability was his biggest concern. That one player that I think is interesting, not at receiver, but just looking at this list, when you talk about position value, you think about this Jets team that I think Jets fans probably don't. I would say in terms of mock drafts, I don't think Jets fans would be the least excited to hear this player's name, but he might end up being one of the best, is Caleb Downs, the safety out of Ohio State.
Yes.
Because
he's a ball player.
So a lot of people think, I saw one person say he's the best safety prospect to declare for the NFL draft since Eric Berry. Like that is a bold statement for someone to attach their name to. I don't remember which analyst it was, but they did.
Yep.
And I think Jets fans hear safety, second overall, people are going to say slam the brakes when you can draft Reese, Bailey, Bain at a premium position, but it's just food for thought going through the rest of the process.
But it's safe to say right now, the Jets aren't taking a quarterback at 2. If they're staying at 2 or whoever's coming to 2, let's just say it's extremely unlikely.
Yeah, someone would have to have a meteoric rise at the quarterback position. And, I maybe this is the it doesn't feel like there's going to be a Baker Mayfield in 2018 that just comes shooting up the draft boards.
No, because he took that team to the national semifinals. I like Ty Simpson, and I'm going to be very interested to find out what other people think about him. I know you were down in Alabama and he wasn't there. Did you talk to anybody about Simpson? Because early on last season, you're like, wow, this guy's really got something.
Yeah.
He reads it well. He's very accurate. He's pretty athletic. He maneuvers well in the pocket. And I think he got banged up down the stretch. I mean, we heard that about Garrett and Nussmeier as well. But what was the feel about Simpson at this point? Not for the Jets necessarily, just overall as a prospect.
I feel like, speaking to people in Mobile, it came across as, maybe, I don't want to say polarizing, but when you think about players who have 15 starts or less in college, Mitchell Trubisky's on that list, but so is Cam Newton. But Cam Newton also went to a junior college before going to Florida and then Auburn. So I think there's an experience thing there. I think if you're a scout or if you're an NFL draft fan, what you like in the pro Ty Simpson world is that he played in the SEC. There's promise there, like you said. I'm pretty sure he was a Saban recruit. And you think about the background of being a coach's son. People say that too, but the offense is more pro style. I don't remember which analyst told me this in Mobile, but someone was saying to me, the Simpson, maybe it was Ryan Wilson, CBS Sports, was saying the Ty Simpson background is, in terms of the offense that they ran, is a little more pro ready than your classic college offense.
Mm-hmm.
So that's on the pro side. On the negative side is the starts and the performance down the stretch. So, Matt Miller had him actually to the Jets in his latest mock draft at 44 overall. But Mel Kiper has Ty Simpson going 16 overall, also to the Jets. So
Mel's latest mock had him going 16, huh?
Yeah, or his first mock. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he hasn't released one in a couple weeks, and that was the first one of the draft process, but it was 16 overall.
All right, Senior Bowl standouts, the guys who are actually there on the ground. Give us a few.
Well, let's start with who you said, Garrett Nussmeier.
Yeah.
I think that going into the week, people were curious, how banged up was he actually down the stretch at LSU? Because, he was so impressive in 2024, and Drew Fabianich, who was on the pod a couple weeks ago, was saying he can't, what was his quote? I can't unsee what I saw in 24.
Yeah.
4,000 yards, 29 passing touchdowns in the SEC. That's impressive. I think with Nussmeier, he definitely looked like the best, most consistent quarterback in Mobile.
Yep.
I don't know where he lands in terms of what day, what round, but intriguing option. How could it not be?
Coach's son.
Coach's son as well. Yeah, his dad's the OC in New Orleans.
That's right.
So I think that there's definitely intrigue there. The other funny thing is that, Brian Baldinger was telling me that Nussmeier's got a younger brother, who's 6'5".
Quarterback?
I think so.
Okay.
But he's it's not like they both got the height gene. I'll put it that way.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit. He's listed as 6'1".
So yeah, let me pull up to see.
And again, these schools, and this is not a knock. I'm not pinpointing any school here as far as colleges are concerned.
Oh, you're going to call them out for the height weight?
No, I'm just saying you're going to see different measurements and height once we get to Indianapolis when we're talking combine.
Yeah. So you know what's funny? I will say, when you're looking up, for anyone listening, watching, when you look up a player's height weight, and they went to the combine, use the NFL draft profile. That's NFL draft and combine website, because those are the official.
So what do they have?
measurements.
6'2"?
Well, okay. You know what? Good question. Let's see what LSU has him at.
Well, while you're talking about that, while you're researching that, I will say, to your point about Nussmeier, I mean, people are talking about him last year at this point as, hey, he comes back. He has a big year. He could be a potentially top 10 pick. So, obviously, he went through the year. LSU had some ups and downs. The offensive line struggled at times. Brian Kelly lost his job, and he was dealing with an abdominal injury this year, Nussmeier.
Yep.
He eventually got benched, and he never played again.
Yep. So, Nussmeier on LSU's website.
6'2".
He's actually listed at 6'1", 205.
Okay.
Senior Bowl, he weighed in at 202.
Yep.
6010, which I think is 6'1".
That sounds like 6'1".
So 6'1", 2.
Yeah, so good point there. Credit Drew and the gang because they're getting the heights and the measurements, the weights there. So yeah.
But he was impressive.
No, no. Listen, that doesn't mean you can't play in the league. It's just, again, each team is going to look at the position and say, okay, this is what we want in the position. We'd like the guy to be this height. When you're talking about a quarterback, if you are a quarterback who's not the biggest guy in the world, you got to find those lanes. And sometimes that's because of design moves.
Yep.
And sometimes that's you on your own. And you have to manipulate defensive backs and linebackers and things like that with your eyes, and you got to change things up with arm angles. Bottom line.
For what it's worth, when Baker Mayfield was a college prospect out of Oklahoma, he weighed in at the combine 6'1", 215. So a little 10 pounds heavier.
Yeah, and you watch Baker right now, you're thinking that he's a smaller quarterback.
Right. I think the biggest difference between someone like Baker and Nussmeier from a physical standpoint is just as prospects, Baker weighed 13 pounds more than what Nussmeier did at the Senior Bowl.
Right.
Not to say he can't put on muscle, put on weight. Obviously, that's part of the NFL process. But you're asking me about other players that stood out.
Yep.
Quarterback-wise, like Talon Green, the Arkansas quarterback, just got like raw physical traits. He's a big quarterback. He's got a whip of an arm. He's mobile. I don't know how, I would think that he would be considered a little more raw.
A project, right.
But Malachi Fields, the Notre Dame receiver, was someone that was making plays all over.
I've always liked him. And, going back to watching college football on Saturdays and watching Virginia, I always thought the dude was a quality receiver. He's
big, too.
It's interesting because he transfers to Notre Dame, which is the more prominent program. And I think the Irish should have been in the college football playoff, but
You're trying to win over the Notre Dame?
No, that's for another day. My sister went to Notre Dame. But, when you look at his numbers, you're like, okay, but he's just a really good football player. And from the sounds of it, he started throughout the week. So maybe
he did.
So maybe Malachi Fields is first round pick or early in second, something like that.
It could end up like that for sure. He's 6'4", 218 for what it's worth. So he's a big bodied receiver.
Yep.
And I feel like every year we're talking about receivers out of the Senior Bowl. Ricky Pearsall, obviously people are going to point to Puka Nacua. It's hard to find Puka Nacua's drafted in the 5th round to be what he is today.
He's one.
There are always receivers like that. And another guy that stands out, more of a two linebackers. One's more homegrown in terms of the Jersey area. It's Kyle Lewis, grew up in East Orange, near Florham Park. He went to Pitt. There was this great video on Twitter that was all of his one-on-ones and pass coverage, and he's sticky. And he was very good at the Senior Bowl. He grew up I talked to him after one of the practices. He said he grew up a Giants fan, but I said, what would you be okay playing, in green and white? He says, as long as it's at MetLife, it doesn't matter because one of the things he wants to do is give back to his high school as soon as possible because he feels like his high school kind of shaped him to be the person that he is today. And so it would be a big honor for him to be drafted by one of the hometown teams.
Okay, we're rooting for him, even though he was a Giants fan.
The other thing is, it's interesting. As much as there is the players that didn't really perform It just overall in terms of the draft, like every year there are players who don't necessarily have the stats, but you're like, this guy's got the traits, he's got the ability, he's got the tape. Then there are guys who, like Jacob Rodriguez, 5th in Heisman voting. He's got all the stats, led the FBS with 7 forced fumbles. He's a proven commodity in college, and people are questioning him, based on size, based on other things. And he showed up to Mobile, and he was great. And I think that there are probably going to be a lot of people that say, like, that guy's just a football player. Like, I don't care what he runs or what he tests at, but he's a good football player.
You had a chance to talk to him, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he said, I asked him if he met with the Jets. He said yes. I said, what was that like? He mentioned that he thought it was really authentic, the vibe that he got from whoever he spoke to, assuming some form of scout or personnel. He said, I got a really good sense of that they were authentic. They kind of told me the position they were in and where they want to go. And he said that it was a really good meeting.
Well, he seems like a sincere guy, old school approach. And to your point, hey, listen, maybe he's not winning the combine workout gold medal, but dude's a really good football player.
And speaking to him and watching his, he has a really cool story for anyone that doesn't know. He went to Virginia. Maybe he was teammates with Malachi Fields. Now that I'm saying this, now I'm thinking about this.
Man, how about all these wahoos?
He went to Virginia as a quarterback, and then he transferred. And how many times do we see transfer portal working out? He transferred because there was a new coaching staff, and it didn't really work out in his favor. The only thing he could do was walk on at Texas Tech as a linebacker. Fast forward a couple of years, he's captain of the Red Raiders defense, which was incredible. So it's a really cool story. His wife is in the military. College Game Day did a feature on him, and I would highly suggest watching it.
So apparently you watched College Game Day, and then you took off and ran your errands on Saturday.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Game Day is incredible to watch, and I love the human interest pieces.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
But I always come back for the night game.
Listen, you can flip things quite quickly in the league if you hit on a draft class, if you hit on a couple draft classes. What Darren Mougey has ahead of him right now is that you have the number 2 overall selection. You got the 16th pick that came from Indianapolis and that Sauce Gardner trade. You do have the Colts 2027 first-round pick as well. You have two second-round picks as well, one coming from Dallas. You have Dallas's first-round pick next year as well. So as far as maneuvering and navigating on draft weekend, he's going to have a lot of options. And the Jets, yes, we know they entered this offseason with it. Several holes. And that started with the coaching staff and Aaron Glenn's filling that out. But free agency, league year is going to be upon us just 10 days maybe after the combine is over. The negotiating window opens on March 11th. The Jets have financial flexibility. That projected cap is more than $300 million. So we talked about it a little bit last week, but I would anticipate, as Mougey said before, free agency-wise, calculated aggression, but you're just not going to be dropping it in one spot.
Yeah.
If anything, the Patriots showed us a couple things throughout the offseason that they had their quarterback in place. We know that, and the Jets have to get quarterback stability. But they address several holes throughout their roster. And I think the Jets will have the opportunity to do that in free agency, that they go into draft weekend saying, okay, if we played on Sunday, I have my lineup. You want to have as much freedom as possible when you go out there on draft weekend. But with what Mougey has as far as draft capital this year and next year, he's going to be having everything on the table because people are going to be calling, hey, you looking at this? And he's going to be calling elsewhere and saying, you looking at that? Can I go back? Whatever, things like that. And then look at that capital in 27.
Yeah, it is the ideal situation for any GM because all you want to do is you want to have options. And the Jets have that. They have the capital this year, next year. You want to move up? Go for it. Someone had mentioned what the Texans did a couple of years ago. as just an example of something Darren Mougey could do if he wanted to, where
CJ Will Anderson.
Yeah, they draft CJ Stroud 2 overall.
Yep.
Next pick, the Cardinals are on the clock, I believe, and the Texans are like, we want Will Anderson. So they traded, they moved up again, and they said, yeah, we'll take Will Anderson. Obviously, that paid out big time for them, but not that Darren Mougey will do that, not that the Jets would be in that camp this year, but they have the capital to do so if they so choose, which is really what you want come draft night, is you want options to do what you want.
Yeah, well, I know you're pumped. It's right around the corner, and in about 10 days, I think we'll be in Indianapolis already for the combine.
Yeah,
so the draft might have started in Mobile, but it's continuing in America's heartland.
That's right, and then it'll end this year in Pittsburgh.
That's right.
But
the path to Pittsburgh.
The path to Pittsburgh, that's right. How about this? Rank the food scene, Pittsburgh, Indianapolis, and Mobile, because Mobile's sneaky. If you're a seafood person, Mobile's sneaky good.
I think Pittsburgh is one of the more underrated cities in this country.
And if you're going, maybe you should catch a Pirates game. I always wanted to go to that.
Go
ballpark.
Puggles, yeah, no doubt. I would say beautiful backdrop as far as right.
I gotta go.
Yes, I go maybe. I don't know, man. Is anybody in Indianapolis going to be watching this? We've been there so much over the years. We've had some good experiences. We've had some interesting experiences. I will say that.
That's right.
So
but if you go, you got to get the shrimp cocktail. If you've never been from St. Elmo's or Harry and Izzy, same kitchen.
Yeah, good spot. I think Pittsburgh, you might have more selections.
Yep.
I think Mobile is always cool because you're getting that Southern cooking, and you're not getting that everywhere.
Yeah, and it's like right on the body of water, so you get nice seafood if it's for you.
And Indy's a great convention town. Okay.
It's great when it's cold because you don't have to go outside to get from the hotel to the convention center. I like Indianapolis.
We're going to have to ask Frank Reich about this.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So,
that's a great point.
So
he probably has some good recommendations.
Oh, yeah. So Reich, yeah, we know about St. Elmo's. We've been going there for a couple decades.
Yeah, give us some under the radar.
Yeah,
we're willing to go outside of the downtown Indianapolis bubble. It's a good point.
Yeah. All right.
Maybe we'll talk to some people to talk to him to get back to us.
All right. When he gets out of his next meeting, we'll talk to him.
Okay.